Well, digital transformation is a journey. It's not an activity that happens within a certain time frame and it's done. It starts and it gets a life of its own. So it's important to note that in the space of digital transformation, the people are the most important factor, followed by the culture of the people, the skill set that the people have, and then how they interact with the systems. So there's the people and all the elements around that. Then there's the systems, that's now the technology that has to be invested on. And then we have the third part on how the competition looks like. So when you're investing in systems, you have to see how the industry, the competition is looking like. Above all, you have to focus mainly on whatever technology you want, how it's going to serve the customer. If you ask me what comes first, it's the customer. Everything we do is centered on what we want to give the customers an experience. And based on that, then obviously, the people who want to interact with the customer bring in the gist of everything. And then the system, in terms of their scalability, sustainability, reliability, and ability to have a level of uptime. The other thing that is important is scale and sustainability. Scale and sustainability is important because you put in place a system that is supposed to serve the customer in a transformational way. Maybe it makes it more efficient, it makes it faster, or it does more things for the customer. So you put in one little item and it's able to pick up more. So for example, you have a customer relationship management system where you put the details of the customer, and the system is able to repurpose that data and send out communication on the customer's birthday, send a reminder on some critical days for the customer, which is collected based on the interaction. So for that kind of system to be able to serve the customer and the people well who are in the organization, it has to be that it has levels of logging in. Some people can view, others can edit, others can create reports out of it. It has to be that if the organization grows beyond a certain number of employees, it can scale in that manner. If the organization grows in terms of branches or growing outside the country, it should be able to be accessed. It should be scalable in the way that you can access it from anywhere. Mainly, it's best to have most of this information working off a cloud as opposed to a physical location. And if the information or the system that we have created is needed all the time, then we get into the infrastructure that supports that. So we have power and redundancy around that. A lot of times we talk about digital transformation and we forget two key elements, and that is the partnerships that we get into and the security. The partnerships we get into are critical because whoever you partner with to set up the system needs to have the same goals as you. So if their goal is to offer efficiency, their goal is to offer always up systems, their goal is to entice the customer, it's very easy to create service level agreements across yourself and partners if you all have the same ambitions. So who you partner with is critical, and they have to also have employees who have almost a similar culture as your organization. The other aspect that we usually don't talk about a lot is security. In Kenya, for example, we've had recent issues of systems that have been hacked and data for the customers I'm not sure they got to the level of interfering with the data, but they were not able to access the data, and someone is asking for a ransom so that they can be able to access the data. Those are some of the things that have to be considered critically. And even the customer and the users who are accessing the digital transformation systems that you've put in place, they must be secure. So you may secure the systems and forget to secure the computers for the users who are trying to access it. A digital leader, like any other leader within the organization, must have basic communication skills. Leadership requires that you're interacting with people. And most of the time people believe that a digital transformation leader comes from the IT section, but it's not all the time. You could be transforming technology within the human resources space. You could be transforming technology within an outlet like a retail outlet. You need more skills than just the technology. So the person has to be able to communicate effectively. They should be able to understand the basics of how to conduct a good research, because you don't transform your organization without understanding the impact of that transformation to your existing customer base and the future. The third thing is the lead has to be very clear on project management. Digital transformation most of the time takes the shape of a project for some time before it's rolled out, launched, and becomes part of business as usual. So project management skill set is critical in a role like that. The other skill set that is critical is understanding of the technology. This is where now, if it's an HR expert, they understand human capital systems. If it is a transformation that is taking place in the customer service center, not only is a lead supposed to understand the systems within the customer service center area, but also the technology that supports those systems. The other aspect the digital lead is supposed to be clear about is what are the trends? What's going on in the space of Internet of Things? If they don't understand what role machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and everything that's happening into the future of digital transformation, it's difficult for them to replicate that in the organization. The biggest strength that I find that has actually led to a lot of that has led to success in terms of digital transformation in an organization is when they have a digital lead who is like a champion, someone who can rally, someone who can sell something, someone who can tell the story. Buy-in usually is based on the demeanor and the kind of person who is actually trying to sell that agenda. It's like in politics. If a politician wants to sell their agenda, they have to lobby, they have to speak to people, they have to have meetings, they have to have engagements, they have to have a reward system, they have to have incentives. So the digital lead needs to think in that way also, because a digital transformation transcends across all the aspects of the business. So you can't say you're an IT person and you won't be able to speak to the finance people. You cannot say that you are a digital transformation lead, but you don't know how to speak to the security guys at the entrance of the organization, because biometrics will be put right there at the entrance and the security people will be leading the customer on how to use it. So those are the basics. There are more, but it is actually a people role. It is technology, but the people aspect, the engagement aspect, the aspect around understanding the organization, understanding the organizational setup, who reports to who needs to access what, and also understanding how other organizations that are transforming digitally, locally and globally are doing things. It's very easy for benchmarking, but the digital lead has to have that frame of mind. I think the biggest struggle with most digital transformation leads is alignment of what they are doing with what the organization is looking for. The CEO would be looking at the numbers. The shareholders are looking at the numbers. The employees are looking at how these assist them in achieving their targets, which usually are based on revenue targets. So the digital lead needs to have a basic understanding on how the organization makes money and how the systems that they are bringing in place are going to assist people in their roles, because it's always a game of what's in it for me. So you're launching this beautiful thing, but my main interest is how is it going to help me achieve my target so that I can get my annual bonus or get my promotion. So the aspect around why the business exists and how what you're rolling out is going to meet that objective is critical. There are a number of things that frustrate digital leads. It could be how they interact with people, how they monetize the systems, how they select the best system, how reliable the systems they select are, how excited the organization within the digital transformation journey is about what's going on, and the culture in the organization. So I'm going to speak through all these in no particular order. The digital transformation role is usually the most exciting role in the organization because all eyes are on that role. The board wants to know how quickly the organization is transforming. Statistics indicates that organizations that digitally transform successfully increase their revenues. Statistics indicate that the potential or the ability of an organization to exist into the future depends on how quickly it's transforming and aligning itself to the changing trends. So you'll find that there is a lot of attention on the digital head. Now the digital head, on the other end, can get very frustrated. First, because the systems might be very expensive. And you know the procurement process when it comes to purchase of systems, the higher the budget, the more the involvement. You probably need to get approval up to the board level. When you're trying to get approval at the board level, if the digital person who's leading this whole process is not showing up in those board meetings and is sending the CEO or someone to speak on behalf of them on what they want to do, and the system is highly technical and very expensive at the same time, that might pose a challenge for him or her. So for that reason, the balance between how to pitch this potential solution and make sure that you get buy-in based on the fact that it's very expensive. The second challenge that the digital leads face is integration of what they are purchasing with the existing systems. Let's say for a bank, for example, they already have a core banking system. The core banking system handles all the transactions and has information for the customers. And most of all, it's a very sensitive system. You don't just go in there to change stuff. And now you want to go through a transformation that can pull data from the core banking system and assist you to interact better with the system. So there's a whole process around what happens when you query the data and you spool the data. Does it affect what's seated on the core system? Does the data change? And how do you use the data that you've picked from the core system? Besides that, you may find that you now want to create a payment solution that sits away from the core banking system. And they must interact simultaneously to be able to give the customer a sort of response. So let's say it's a credit card system or it's a mobile application. So Safaricom, for example, who's a provider of the wallet that is going to do the payment solutions, may ask for access to certain data. There are also regulations around data access between one organization and another. So the digital lead has to be an expert in understanding how data can be accessed, to what levels. They have to be an expert in understanding what customer data can be accessed, what the effect of mirroring two systems or getting two systems to interact, and what the output would look like. Sometimes the output can end up missing out certain important fields, which could make a decisioning process not accurate. So that level of frustration is something that the digital leads usually face. The other frustration they face is monetization of the systems that they've purchased. Sometimes you'll hear in the corporate world people talking about, so tell us what you're doing with these big digital toys that you've been purchasing. When the revenue expected remains the same after purchasing a significantly expensive system, the digital lead is always in a very frustrated position. The question is, why did we have to invest so much on this, and yet we can see that the revenues are still the same? So at this point, the digital lead has to know what the main objective of getting the system was, maybe futuristic, so that we can be compliant with certain things that are going to change in the industry. So that's not going to change the revenue. Or maybe we changed the system to increase the speed at which we do certain transactions. So if we increase the speed at which a transaction is done and you wanted to withdraw 10,000 shillings, it does not mean that because it was fast you would withdraw 10,000 5 times. So the understanding that fast is the customer experience, and it does not mean that the customer will do it many times, because many times it's depending on how much the customer has in their account and how many times they want to transact based on their business need. Sometimes it could be something as basic as the system is very expensive, and what it was doing is to just make sure that when the customer calls in, the customer service representative has all the information on one screen. That is not going to bring revenue today. In terms of monetization of the digital systems that have been purchased, that can be a very big challenge for the digital lead. Selling that story to the organization and the shareholders especially, they assume that once you've purchased, we're going to see the revenues. Now, when the revenues don't come through, it's very easy for that person to actually resign, because you go into meetings where people are asking the revenue impact of the latest purchase that usually is more expensive than payroll 5 times. So the ability to explain what the key objective for setting up that system was, and the long term, and that even goes down to how it was pitched in the first place. The other challenge that digital leads face is inability to write a good business case. Now, when you don't write a good business case, you don't get approval to buy the right systems. You end up buying systems that can almost do what you wanted, because your business case is not strong enough. Business case has to show investment and return. But if you write a very good business case that articulates clearly how we are going to increase the revenue, also articulates when the revenue will come, and also articulates how the deployment is going to be and what resources will be required, it's very easy to always pull back that business case, showcase it whenever people ask questions. It is very frustrating when the digital lead is not able to deal with that aspect of his role. One of the frustrations that digital leads face is, I think, around competence. Because this is a fairly new role in the market, some people get promoted internally. Sometimes the board and the leadership, they want to do things differently. They'll go and get fresh people with a fresh mindset, totally from a different organization where they transformed the business. Others would look for people who've been in the business for long and train them. All that works. What's important is that the person finally understands the culture of the organization that they're transforming for. That the person understands how the organization is structured. The person understands how the organization is positioned in industry and what the expectations within the industry are. And the person has a full understanding of who the customer is and what the customer expects from an organization. That's from a brand perspective. There's a brand promise and this is the expectation. So some organizations, customers have very low tolerance for failure. Some other organizations, customers understand that they're always transitioning and changing things, and they do understand that there will be failure once in a while. And for the digital lead, to avoid all this frustration, they need to empower themselves and learn all the things that I've mentioned. Digital leads get frustrated because it's not like being a head of technology. It's not like being a head of marketing, where you're being an expert in your area of focus. You have to know everything. You install the system today, for example, and the board members in their meeting, they decide, actually, we need to digitize how we run our meetings. You're not an expert on how executive board meetings happen. You're not an expert on how they run their meetings, what dates they submit their reports, in what format they submit their reports. As a digital lead, you have to be flexible enough to know who to call on board, who to put in your team, and what information to collect, and who to speak to. So there is, for example, a software that's called Board Books, which allows board members to actually log in and upload their reports. And then everybody who's part of that board is able to read and view those reports. And you can only edit the part that belongs to you. For the rest of the people, you can only view. So it's easy to have a paperless meeting. So sometimes if you're very senior in terms of technology and you're supposed to digitize something like that, you find that you're sitting in the company of the secretary to the PA, and the PA to the MD. You're in the company of the human resource person, you're in the company of an ExCo member. So that mix of human beings that you're seated with may not be as technical as you, so you cannot go into the meeting and use all those abbreviations that people use for technology that lose people. Now you have to bring yourself to that level. So having said all those challenges, I don't think there's any of those things that someone cannot be taught. So you choose the right person with the right skill set, mindset, ability to learn, willingness to teach, and willingness to become an ambassador of digital transformation. Then the rest, they can be taught. Issues around artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, data security, all that, they can be taught and they can do certifications around that. What you need is a right person with the mindset of, I'm an ambassador for change and I must have everybody on board. Thanks.